The last thing I remember about being alive was the sound of metal screaming. It wasn't loud at first. It was sharp, tearing, like the world itself was ripping open. I was driving home on a road I had taken 1,000 times before, thinking about nothing important, thinking about everything and nothing all at once. The sky was gray, heavy with rain that hadn't fallen yet. The radio was on, but I couldn't tell you what song was playing. I only know that in the space of a single heartbeat, everything ordinary disappeared. The impact came from the side, not dramatic, not cinematic, just sudden and wrong. My body jolted, my head snapped, and the steering wheel crushed into my chest with a force I didn't know existed. Pain flared, white-hot, blinding, but it didn't last. What came next wasn't pain. It was absence. Time fractured. I was aware of motion without movement, of sound without hearing. The scream of twisting metal faded into something distant, like it was happening underwater. My breath stopped, but panic didn't come. That was the strangest part. I should have been terrified. I should have been fighting for air. Instead, there was a strange stillness spreading through me, as if my body had made a decision without asking me. Then I felt myself slipping. It wasn't falling. It wasn't floating. It was more like loosening, like something that had been tightly knotted was finally letting go. My chest felt heavy, then irrelevant. My hands, my legs, my face, everything physical began to fade, not into darkness, but into quiet. And suddenly, I was above myself. I didn't see it happen. I just was. I was no longer inside the car. I was not inside anything. I was hovering, suspended, aware in a way I had never been before. Below me was the wreckage, twisted metal, shattered glass, steam rising from the hood, and inside that wreckage was my body. I recognized it the way you recognize an old photograph of yourself, familiar but distant, personal but no longer mine. There was blood, more than I expected. My hair was matted, my face pale, my body unnaturally still. I remember noticing how small I looked, how fragile, how breakable. People were running toward the car. Someone was shouting. Someone else was crying. I could see mouths moving, arms waving, hands pounding on the glass. I understood what was happening, but I wasn't part of it anymore. I felt no pain, no fear, only a deep, expanding awareness that something irreversible had occurred. I knew, with a certainty that didn't need explanation, that my heart had stopped. That realization didn't bring terror. It brought clarity, and in that clarity my entire life pressed forward. I wasn't special before this. I was 33 years old, born and raised in the Midwest, the kind of woman people describe as normal. I worked, paid my bills, worried about the future, regretted the past. I believed in God in the vague way most people do, not enough to surrender, not enough to deny. Faith was something I kept on a shelf, dusted off on holidays and hard days. I had disappointments I carried quietly, dreams I had postponed so long they had almost stopped hurting, guilt that surfaced late at night when the world was quiet enough to listen. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't saintly, I was human, living fast, loving cautiously, avoiding anything that asked too much of me. I didn't think about death. Not really. I thought it was far away. Something for later. Something that would give me time to prepare. I was wrong. As I hovered above the scene, that life, the routines, the worries, the small victories, felt impossibly thin. Like a costume I had worn without realizing it could be removed so easily. Then the world began to dim, not visually, but energetically. The sounds below softened until they barely registered. The people became outlines. The car, the road, the sky. They all began to lose their weight. And behind me, or within me, or all around me, something began to pull. It wasn't forceful. It was inviting. I felt drawn, gently but irresistibly, away from the scene of my death. The space around me stretched, folded, dissolved. I was moving without traveling, transitioning without effort. There was no tunnel at first, no dramatic shift, just a growing sense that I was crossing a threshold I had never noticed before. And then the light appeared. It didn't burst into existence. It unfolded. It was not blinding. It didn't hurt my eyes because I no longer had eyes the way I understood them. The light was warm, intelligent, alive. It surrounded me without crowding me, filled me without overwhelming me. It felt ancient and immediate at the same time. With the light came understanding, not answers yet, not explanations, but a knowing that this place, wherever I was more real than anything I had ever touched, more solid than the road, the car, my own body. I felt seen, not observed, not judged, seen in the deepest sense of the word. Every thought I had ever buried, every intention I had ever disguised, every fear I had pretended not to have, it was all visible here. And yet there was no shame in that exposure, only truth. As I moved deeper into the light, something else began to surface. Emotion. Not the scattered, conflicting emotions of human life, but a single, overwhelming current. Awe, reverence, a sense of being in the presence of something infinitely greater than myself. I realized then that I was not alone. I couldn't see anyone yet. There were no forms, no faces, no outlines, but there was a presence, or perhaps many presences, woven into the light itself, a consciousness so profound it made my entire life feel like a whisper, and somewhere within that presence I sensed him. I didn't name him, I didn't need to. Recognition came before thought, before belief, before doctrine. The awareness of him changed the light itself. It deepened, intensified, became layered with meaning. This was not just a place, this was an encounter approaching, and I knew, suddenly and unmistakably, that I was standing on the edge of something final. Something that would either claim me completely or send me back forever changed. As that realization settled over me, the light seemed to draw closer, wrapping around me like a breath held for centuries. I felt myself preparing, not consciously, not deliberately, but with the kind of readiness that comes when the soul recognizes its origin. I did not yet know what would be revealed. I did not yet know what would be said. But I knew that whatever came next would divide my life into before and after, and there would be no returning to who I had been. The light did not rush me. That was the first thing I noticed as I moved deeper into it. There was no urgency, no pulling that felt desperate or demanding. Instead, it felt patient, deliberate, as if whatever awaited me had all the time in existence. And somehow, so did I. The further I went, the more the idea of distance stopped making sense. I wasn't traveling through space, I was traveling through awareness. Each moment brought a deeper clarity, a sharper sense of reality than anything I had ever known on Earth. The light wasn't just around me anymore, it was within me. It was me, and yet it was far beyond me at the same time. Fear began to rise then, not the panicked fear of danger, but a quieter, heavier kind. The kind that comes when you realize you cannot hide, when you understand that nothing can be edited, softened, or explained away. I felt exposed, not naked in body, but naked in essence. Every motive I had ever had, every choice driven by selfishness or pride, every moment I had ignored the quiet tug of conscience, it all existed here with me. I didn't see these things as pictures or memories yet. I felt them as weight. And with that weight came understanding. I began to realize that this place was not governed by rules the way Earth is. There were no excuses here, no comparisons, no way to point to someone else and say they were worse. Truth was absolute, and it belonged to everyone equally. The light grew brighter, warmer, more intense, but not harsh. It felt like standing near a fire that does not burn but reveals. The closer I drew, the more I sensed the presence I had felt earlier becoming defined, not in shape or form, but in authority, in purity, in a power so complete that resisting it never even crossed my mind. I understood then that I was approaching the center of it all. Not a throne, not a gate, not a judgment seat as I had imagined growing up, but a presence that was judgment simply by being what it is: perfect truth, perfect love, perfect justice, inseparable from mercy. The contradiction didn't confuse me here. It made sense. I felt small, but not insignificant, broken, but not rejected, known completely, yet still held. And then my life unfolded. It didn't play like a movie. There was no sequence, no beginning or end. Instead, it surrounded me all at once. Moments layered over moments, emotions intertwined with consequences. I felt what I had felt then, but I also felt what others had felt because of me. The careless words I had spoken and forgotten. The kindness I had withheld because it was inconvenient. The times I chose comfort over courage. I felt the ripple of each decision, spreading outward farther than I had ever imagined. And alongside those, I felt the moments of love. The times I had shown compassion without expecting anything in return. The small, quiet acts I had assumed didn't matter. Here, they mattered more than I ever knew. There was no condemnation in this awareness, only truth. That was what undid me. I had always assumed judgment would feel like accusation, like punishment, like being told how wrong I was. But this was different. This was seeing myself exactly as I was, without filters, without defenses, and realizing I had already known these truths all along, buried deep beneath distraction and denial. The presence did not force this upon me. It allowed it. And that allowance felt like love. As the life review deepened, I became aware of something else, an ache, a longing that I had carried my entire life without knowing its source, a homesickness for something I couldn't name. Standing there, wrapped in that light, I finally understood it. This was what I had been missing. Not success, not security, not approval. This, the nearness of the source of everything good. I sensed then that I was not merely observing this presence, I was being approached by it. The light intensified in a way that felt personal, focused, intentional. The awareness of him, because by now I could no longer avoid that understanding, became overwhelming. This was not a symbol. This was not an idea. This was Jesus. The realization did not come from doctrine or memory. It came from recognition at a level deeper than thought. Every story I had half believed, every name I had spoken casually, every image I had dismissed as metaphor, they all fell away. What remained was certainty. I felt unworthy, not in a dramatic, self-loathing way, but in the simple recognition of contrast. His purity beside my imperfection, his wholeness beside my fragmentation, his love beside my hesitation to love fully. And yet I was not pushed away. If anything, the closeness increased. The fear I had carried into the light now transformed into reverence. Awe so deep it felt like it might break me open. I understood that nothing I was could surprise him. Nothing I had done could shock him. And still, the weight of being known like this was almost unbearable. I sensed that he knew every version of me, the woman I was, the woman I could have been, the woman I might still become. That awareness came with a quiet grief, not his, mine. I grieved the time I had wasted, the love I had rationed, the faith I had postponed. I saw how often I had felt nudged toward something higher and chosen something easier instead. I saw how gently I had been guided, how patiently I had been pursued, and I saw how often I had looked away. The light seemed to pause with me in that realization. There was no rush to move on, no pressure to reach a conclusion. This space allowed sorrow, reflection, and understanding to coexist without collapsing into despair. Then something shifted. The review faded, not erased but settled, like pages closing in a book that had been fully read. My awareness narrowed, focusing forward again. The presence before me felt closer than ever. So close that the distinction between observer and observed began to blur. I sensed that something was about to be given, not taken, not demanded, given. The weight of the moment pressed into me with a gravity I cannot fully describe. I understood that whatever was coming next would not be lengthy, it would not be complicated, it would not be wrapped in mystery, it would be simple, and it would carry more power than anything I had ever heard. I did not yet receive it. Instead, I felt a hesitation, not from him, but from the boundary between worlds, a tension, like a thread pulled tight between two realities. I became aware, dimly, of my body again, of the place I had left, of the fragile line connecting me to a life that was slipping further away with every passing moment. The nearness of Jesus did not diminish as this awareness returned. If anything, it sharpened the importance of what was about to happen. I sensed that time, if it could be called that, was limited, that a decision was approaching, though I did not yet know its nature. Stay, return. Those concepts hovered at the edge of my awareness without being fully formed. What I knew with certainty was this: I was standing before eternal truth, and I was about to receive something that would define the rest of my existence, whether on earth or beyond it. The light held me there, suspended between worlds, between endings and beginnings. And then everything grew impossibly still. The stillness was absolute. It felt as if all of existence had paused, holding its breath. The light no longer expanded or shifted. It simply was. And within that stillness, I understood that the moment I had been moving toward, since the instant my heart stopped, had finally arrived. I was fully aware now of the fragile connection to my body. It pulsed faintly, like an echo from a world that suddenly felt impossibly distant. Earth felt loud compared to this place, heavy, rushed, incomplete. Yet the pull back toward it was undeniable, like a tide beginning to turn. And still, the presence before me did not retreat. Jesus was nearer than ever, not as a shape or image, but as an overwhelming reality. The light surrounding him carried weight, meaning, authority, and a love so pure it stripped away every illusion I had ever carried about myself. This love did not flatter me. It did not excuse me. It completed me in a way that exposed how incomplete I had been all along. I felt myself breaking open, not in pain, but in surrender. Everything I had ever clung to loosened. My need to justify myself, my habit of minimizing my flaws, my quiet belief that I had more time, all of it fell away in the presence of a truth so vast it made resistance feel childish. And then it happened. Not as sound, not as spoken words the way humans speak, but as a sentence delivered directly into the core of my being. It arrived whole, complete, undeniable. A single sentence, perfect in its simplicity, devastating in its clarity. It carried judgment and mercy at the same time. It revealed the urgency of repentance and the depth of grace available. It showed me that love is not passive, that truth cannot be postponed, and that eternity is shaped by what we do with the light we are given now. That sentence changed everything I thought I knew about God. It changed everything I thought I knew about myself. In an instant, I understood why the world feels restless, why people chase fulfillment and never find it, why faith feels optional until it suddenly isn't. I saw how close heaven always is, and how easily it is ignored. I understood that salvation is not an abstract idea. It is personal, immediate, offered, not forced. And I understood that rejecting it is not an act of rebellion but of delay. That sentence showed me that delay has consequences. The weight of that realization hit me all at once. I felt a sorrow deeper than anything I had ever known, not fear of punishment, but grief for how lightly I had treated something so sacred. I saw how often Jesus had been present in my life, quietly waiting, patiently calling, while I filled my days with noise and distraction. And yet, even then, I was not condemned. The love surrounding me intensified, not softened. It did not erase truth, it upheld it. I felt completely accountable and completely loved at the same time. That paradox shattered me. I sensed that the sentence was not given to me for my sake alone. It was entrusted to me, carried into me like a seed that had to be planted back on earth. I knew I would not be allowed to remain here, not yet. The pull toward my body strengthened. This time, fear returned, not of death, but of leaving this peace, leaving this clarity. Leaving the presence I now understood was the source of every good thing I had ever experienced. I felt myself resisting, not with force, but with longing. I did not want to go back to a world where truth is debated instead of lived, where eternity is treated like a theory, where Jesus is a name more often argued about than surrendered to. But the return was already in motion. The light began to thin, not diminish, but recede, like a horizon pulling away as I was gently but firmly guided back. The presence remained with me, even as the space between worlds widened. I understood that his nearness was not confined to that place, but my awareness of it was. The last thing I felt before crossing back was resolve, not my own. Given. Then pain exploded. My body rushed back around me like a cage snapping shut. Weight, gravity, burning, noise. Air forced into lungs that didn't want it. Sensation crashed in violently, chaotically. The stillness was gone. I was alive. Recovery was slow, confusing, physically brutal. But the real struggle came later, after the machines, after the hospital, after people told me how lucky I was. Lucky wasn't the word. I carried something no one could see. That sentence echoed in me constantly, in quiet moments, in sleepless nights, in conversations that suddenly felt shallow. I tried at first to ignore it, to return to who I had been. I couldn't. The woman who died on that road never fully came back. I found myself repenting, not out of fear, but out of recognition. I saw my sins clearly now, without excuses. I felt compelled to turn away from them, not because I was threatened, but because I had finally seen what they cost. I began to hunger for truth, for holiness, for a life aligned with what I had encountered. Comfort stopped satisfying me. Neutrality stopped making sense. Jesus was no longer an idea to me. He was reality. And that is why I am telling you this, not to impress you, not to scare you, but to warn you, with love. You do not have as much time as you think. Repentance is not about shame. It is about alignment. It is about turning toward the light while you still can. The sentence spoken to me after I died was not just for me. It was for anyone willing to listen. If this story stirred something in you, do not silence it. Respond to it. Turn to Jesus now while grace is still offered freely, because eternity is not distant. It is closer than your next breath. If you made it to the end of my story, I believe it's for a reason. I didn't come back from death to stay silent. I came back to testify. What I experienced was more real than this world, and one day, every single one of us will face that reality. Don't wait. Don't delay. Choose truth while you still have time. If this testimony moved you, please comment below and share what you felt while listening. Your story matters too. Subscribe to this channel for more real, near-death and afterlife testimonies. These stories are not here to entertain. They are here to awaken.